What's up, everybody? Welcome to State of the Nation, the Athletics Raiders podcast. Jimmy Nurkin and Vic Tafer. We're here in Napa, and we've been deserted.
We're live at practice. Hear that sound in the background? That
Boom! Boom!
Clicking and clacking? Yeah, they canceled practice today at the last minute. I guess John's giving his players a reward, what he thought was a successful venture. So we're here just kicking it in the hotel.
And he waited to cancel practice till you were up here.
I was here. Yeah.
I was halfway here. I was in Vallejo when I get the text message, no practice. But, hey, what else are we going to do today?
Hey, man, it's a beautiful day in Napa. I'll get some writing done. It's all good. All good.
Well, camp is wrapped up, and we've got the preseason, the second game of the preseason schedule on Saturday. And, preseason games are what they are. But it's been kind of fun a little bit. I mean, the Raiders returning to L.A., first time since they moved. First time since 94 that they've played down there in L.A. They're going back to the L.A. Coliseum. We're not down in L.A., but first time at the L.A. Coliseum since they moved. Vic, you're going to be down there. Does that give a little excitement? Get to see the Coliseum?
I think it's cool. I think the Rams will get a taste of just what the market is for Raider fans.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have heard things. They probably don't realize it till they get out there.
The Rams are probably going to be happy that the Raiders aren't their co-tenants.
Exactly. I think the Raider fans will turn out. And yeah, it's a weird game because they play the Rams, for real. And it's 3 weeks in the season opener. So it's just it's a strange scheduling quirk. But you know what? I can see much as far as strategy or plays. It's going to be just be the Seth Roberts show, I think, and DeAndre Washington will probably get a lot of carries. But yeah, so whatever. It's fun. You see some young guys fighting for jobs. It's always fun to watch.
Didn't the Raiders have this a couple years ago too with the Titans?
That sounds right. Yeah,
where they played them in the preseason. Then was that the year they played them in the opener, or just maybe? I think it was
later in the year.
Yeah, it was the year they played them later in the year.
Yeah,
okay,
but still, it's still weird. And I just think, but again, Gruden and McVay know each other so well, so it's not really gonna. No one's gonna show anything. They're gonna try and surprise each other in the opener.
Do you starters play a little bit, or do you think you just completely back them off of this game?
I think you'll see some guys play like I think Carl played probably like last week, maybe a series or two or a possession. Marshawn may get another touch, maybe not. But I think most you'll see the backups. Like I think you'll probably see last week kind of Cook got a long look. I think this week you'll see E.J. Manuel get most of the playing time and have a chance to kind of fend for himself in this battle for the number 2 job.
All right, well, because training camp is wrapped up, we're going to hand out some awards. It's award time, baby.
We have a really nice or shiny little plaques we'll give out to the player. They're not here today, so we can't give them personally, but we'll do it in Alameda. They'll enjoy these little wine glasses with beer in them. That's whatever. What kind of image is that? But yeah, whatever. So nice awards.
Yeah, they are imaginary, but they are not.
In case you thought I was being serious, no, they're not real.
There's somebody out there that would hold you to it.
Wow, those are cool. Send a picture of those, man.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start off with, and Vic, I'm going to lean on.
Drum rolls? No,
just do a little.
I know drum rolls.
Right. I by missing out on this practice, I really only got to see 2 real practices. I got to see the opener and.
You missed out so much. The excitement was just incredible this game.
Yeah, and I don't know if we mentioned this on the show, but we've talked about it. It's kind of funny how John Gruden's just big. I miss the old 2-a-days and all these days we practice. And here,
what a bunch of crock.
Mini camp, he canceled the last practice. Training camp, he cancels the last practice. He didn't start 2 weeks earlier like he could have as a new coach. There's a
by far the
lightest training camp you've ever seen.
Yeah, the less amount of team drills I've ever seen. Just mostly individual stuff, a lot of group sessions. Just very, very slow. I mean, fans hate when I complain. I'm not complaining, but it was not very exciting. When the Lions came to town for 2 days, that was great stuff. Yeah. That was well worth it. You saw a lot more than you saw previously, but overall, pretty slow-paced. Training camp. And I'll say this also. I want to add this note. I do think they're doing a lot of stuff when we weren't watching. They had the walkthroughs. They would be out here, I think, before we got out here at 9:15. So I have a feeling they're doing things that they didn't want us to see when we're not watching. So maybe it was really rambunctious when we weren't around.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of it is these guys want to get through training camps healthy, but it just kind of goes to show you that you listen to John Gruden's words and then you read his actions, and a lot of his words are really just him needling people and him just saying what everybody kind of expects him to say. There's the whole narrative about him being stuck in the in the 90s. I mean, and he's leaned into that really hard, and I think he wants people to hear him and think that he's really like that when he's.
Yeah. I think you can tell when he talks. You can tell when he's being honest. I think he's primarily pretty honest, and he's going to tell you what he thinks and about injuries and battles. But there are times when he'll say things you can pretty much just say he's not really meaning what he's saying. Like yesterday, he talked about Switzer and Griff Whalen being neck and neck. They're not neck and
Switzer's
neck.
on the team.
Yeah, so
Whalen's fighting.
Whalen's been a nice guy, nice piece. He's played really well. It's going to be a tough time making this roster, but he showed well for himself. So it's a nice little, you throw him a bone, but it's not neck and neck. So I just think there are things he says where you're like, you know what, that's nice, but that's not really true.
You talk about that honesty, and that is one thing I am curious with Gruden in terms of how long term he'll be able to get along with these players, because in the NFL you don't get a whole lot of coaches that honestly assess players. They usually just speak positively about these guys, and he doesn't always. I mean, he's going to and I think is that long term sustainable to be that kind of guy that is if he's frustrated with the player, he's going to let you know about it. I wonder.
I think it also depends on the player. I think he definitely handles guys different ways. Like, let's take these, for example, the quarterbacks. Like Derek Carr, it's all been like building him up, very positive. Like, I love him. He's in the field. He's totally, they're like, rah, rah, just kind of like they're, Whereas Connor Cook is totally opposite. He's on his butt constantly. Like, even when he does well, he's ripping him and just kind of.
Well, that also is the difference between a Pro Bowl quarterback and a borderline backup.
Right. I'm just saying, but I think he we'll see with Carr. I mean, obviously they've gotten along great so far. Everyone's written about that, talked about it. They talk about it all the time, but I'm still waiting to see if when they have adversity, how's that going to change? Because it's not going to be this rosy the rest of the way. It's not possible. I don't think.
A year ago, we were writing about how great the relationship is between Derek Carr and Todd Downing.
A year ago, they were going to the Super Bowl, but that with Derek Carr and Todd Downing and Jack Del Rio was like the motivation or extreme, the best motivator in town. So training camp is training camp. You can't take too much from it. You just look at the overall, battles and who's playing well. And I think, like we saw Friday, I think the biggest thing to take from that was improvements. You see guys getting better, which is all you can ask for out of your coaching staff with young players.
All right, now the drum roll.
Oh, now a drum roll. How about that for suspense building?
Right. First award, Unsung Hero. Vic?
The unsung hero is my guy, Cameron Hunt. Backup.
Explain this one.
Backup guard. He's got no chance of making the roster. God bless you, Cameron. But at least twice. I won't say twice for sure. Maybe 3 times this camp. He has just gotten totally lit up by Gruden. Just totally chewed out for making a mistake. And in a way that you were like, why is he so hard on Cameron Hunt? The guy's not making this team. But obviously he's telling him things he wants others to hear. Use a guy as an example.
I'm not going to yell at you, Gabe Jackson, but I'm going to yell at Cameron Hunt.
So,
hey, Gabe, you better be listening.
Exactly. So he's really killed Hunt twice that I've heard for a while. And, if you're Cameron Hunt, I guess that's just part of the experience of being with John Gruden for 3 weeks.
Yep. All right. Award number 2, the biggest sleeper to emerge, and you kind of called this one way back in our first podcast from camp.
I did, got lucky. Chris Warren, he looks the part. I know he had some problems in Texas with his health and his role, and didn't really always run well in short yard situations, but he's been a beast, man. This has kind of been like a mini and larger Marshawn Lynch. Just runs hard. You can see his athleticism. He got some speed when he gets around the corner. He's playing special teams pretty well. I just think he's a guy who looks like right now, to me, he has a team made already.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key for him is just, and Gruden's going to keep pounding this into his head, keep that pad level low. Because I think that's, if there's an issue with him, it's that he does elevate the pad level. And when he does that, he's not going to get the same kind of push on those short yardage runs. So I think that's going to be the key for him. If he can remember to keep that pad level low, because he's a bigger guy, and it's that's where sometimes those taller running backs have a little bit of a disadvantage. They run a little too upright. So if he can keep the pad level low, I think he could be special for them, and he gives them something different in that running back room. Yeah, that's the big thing.
They have those 2 little guys in Jalen and DeAndre, and even Doug Martin's not very big. So he gives you another big guy, bigger than Marshawn, who can definitely make some guys soar on the defensive side.
All right. The last trip to Napa award, we were just talking running backs, and so the last trip to a Napa award?
It's DeAndre Washington. I don't think they're going to cut DeAndre. Well, they might have to, but I think they'll be able to trade him. I think you saw him get a lot of carries last week.
Yeah.
That wasn't an accident. I think they got a lot of carries on Saturday. I just think there's not really a role for him here. I think they like Jalen Richard a little better. They're both very similar. So it made really no sense keeping both the previous years. I know Bill Musgrave was always frustrated about that. Like, I got two guys do the exact same thing. They're the exact same size. And obviously there's little differences, but primarily they're the same player. I mean, so I just think it doesn't make much sense. I just think you have, we mentioned Doug Martin, Jalen Richard, and now Chris Warren. I gotta believe you can trade DeAndre for a late round pick. I think.
Yeah, I mean he's not he's an NFL running back.
He is,
but it's just there's not enough room. There's not the right fit for him here. I mean,
I'll say this. I think he has a nose for the end zone. He definitely, to my watching him over the years, he runs really well in the red zone. He's definitely kind of has that finishing touch, which I think is a nice thing for running backs to have.
Yeah, I'd be curious if the 49ers are a team that wouldn't look at him. They're obviously dealing with some running back issues. Just signed Alfred Morris to be their bigger back, but Kyle Shanahan likes those kind of smaller, quicker guys. And I mean, he comes from. I know Jalen Richard has been the better receiver between him and DeAndre, but I mean DeAndre comes from Texas Tech, where if you're a running back, you're catching the ball. So I mean, he has history catching the ball, and so I could see that as a potential fit for him if they keep having injury issues.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a bad player. He's a 5th round pick. I think he's outperformed where he was picked. So I think he has some value. He's a smart kid. He definitely has a little bit of twitchiness and has some receiving skills, like you mentioned. So I don't think that'll be that hard to trade DeAndre Washington.
Yeah, the only thing that's really hurt him is that in that same class, an undrafted guy, a tryout guy, just kind of has slightly outperformed him. And Jalen Richard has just been, I think, a little bit better player. It's not a huge separation, but I think
the ball control issues, like Jalen fumbling the ball, definitely I think they brought him back to in the same boat. But I just think Jalen gives a little more on special teams in terms of return possibilities. Probably a little better catching the ball in the backfield, but it's close. I mean, I don't think Jalen Richard's a lot better than DeAndre Washington.
Yeah. All right. The Spirit Award, guys that really.
Cool, yeah, two guys.
Two guys that have that fighting spirit.
Two guys that I enjoy. They make me laugh, and they always make the other players laugh in the locker room. That's James Cowser and Shalik Calhoun. They're really tight. They're good friends. They went to China together this offseason. They have all kinds of stories to share. And James speaks fluent Mandarin. He's a beast when you out there.
He was like an intern for NFL China, right?
He is. He's got his career lined up. So both those guys I thought coming in were long shots to make the team.
Yeah.
And they both played well Friday. I'll give them that. Shalik's got a little better chance than James does, but I just think just really happy guys. Like, I mean, it's good in these locker rooms where, it's tough. Football's not easy. There's, injuries. There's his temper's getting flared. There's guys fighting for jobs. There's coaches yelling at you. So two guys who always keep it light and kind of make other players smile. It's kind of it's a nice thing to have at a camp and even throughout the year. So special shout out to those two guys for kind of keeping their heads up and having a good time at this as long as it lasts.
Yeah, if we look at Cowser, you kind of expect that out of him. He's nicknamed Sunshine. He's a guy from an FCS school, undrafted guy. For Calhoun to keep that attitude is probably more impressive, just because he was a 3rd-round pick, a guy that they brought in to be a situational, a 3rd down pass rusher. He was going to be the 3rd pass rusher behind Bruce Irvin and Khalil Mack. I mean, he was drafted to hold a pretty big role and has already been cut by this team once and brought back, onto the practice squad. And so for him to kind of keep that positive attitude as a guy who you can consider him definitely a draft disappointment, you got to give him kudos for that. Is that enough for him to get back onto this team? I don't know, but
I'll say he's shown some power. Like on Friday in camp. I mean, things I haven't seen before from him, like actually the ability to get through a guy. So. Yeah, I don't want to say he's got no shot, but that D line's loaded, and they brought a lot of guys, a lot of vet guys. Like Frosty Rucker, they brought in a lot for his leadership, for his veteran presence. So that'd be hard to beat him out. And Tank Carradine, another guy who can play up and down the line. So if Calhoun keeps this up, he has to beat someone out who they had kind of penciled in already to make the roster.
Yeah, and I think we all think that Arden Key being that 3rd pass rusher is certainly a better option than they've had in the past couple of years with Cowser and Calhoun. But I mean, if those guys can make, we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
but those guys are certainly behind Arden Key, and that as they should be. But all right, this award, the Ghost to the Post Award.
Props to you for the name.
I came up with the name.
Very, very well done. That goes to our guy Obi Melifonwu, who It's been another interesting camp for him. He's had, obviously, the injuries problems last year, and kind of the coaching staff soured on him last year. They threw him in at cornerback against Tom Brady, which still makes no freaking sense, and he got roasted. And from there, just kind of, that was the end of his season, pretty much, spiritually, at least. And so this year came in, new start. Again, he's got some injury issues, misses time. And there's that one day, I think it was about 7 days, 8 days ago, where they have three guys who are out, three safeties are out. So Obi not only gets reps, he gets a lot of reps, like first team reps, okay, now we can see what this guy can do. The next day, the Lions are coming in for 2 days of workouts. The big chance for him.
Big opportunity.
Look on the field when it starts, and there's no Obi. Obi's not there, and he re-injured himself. It was a little mystery as to what it was. I'm told it's kind of related to, John Gruden said it was a lower body flare-up, whatever that means. I've been told it's kind of related to, maybe related to last year's injury. He had hip surgery last year. There's still some issues down there, and I'm not sure what exactly it is. He's been evaluated. He's been gone for 7 days.
Evaluated by all our evaluators.
Yeah, Gruden can't keep a straight face when you ask him about him, so he's pretty much a dead man walking. I'm not saying that's bad for the health thing, but he's always not going to die. Whatever. He's just... I don't know what they're going to do with him. I don't think you can cut him, so you probably stash him in the IR. I can't see him making the roster at this point. He's too far behind with the new staff. So he's been a ghost here at camp, and therefore a ghost to the post because he's a safety. It's brilliant stuff.
Probably got burned to the post.
Probably didn't get there, but
there's really not a whole lot you can say about the guy. He was supposed to be a guy that was really going to impact that defense, and can't stay healthy.
It's ironic because over the years with Ken Norton and also Reggie McKenzie, they both, and Jack Del Rio, they want guys who love football. He loves ball. That guy's a gamer. I'm not sure Obi loves ball. I'm sure. It's not his fault. The injuries happen, but his toughness has been called into question a little bit by some of the people here last year and this year. So I just don't know at this point if you can say he really loves what he's doing.
All right. Now we're going to move on to the Best Fight Award. And no, this is not anybody who's throwing punches or anything. But what's the best fight, the best positional fight we still have left on this roster?
The receiver one's pretty good, man. Yeah. There's a lot of talent at the top of it. You got Jordy and you got Amari. And we mentioned Switcher's making this team in the slot. And Martavis Bryant. He's shown enough, even though he hasn't,
he didn't trade a third-round pick to cut the guy. So
exactly. He gives you that deep field explosions that you don't have otherwise. So after those four, though, who's next? I have thought going into camp that Seth Roberts is probably going to make it unless they could trade him because it's a weird thing where his contract's already paid pretty much. They already paid him money through bonuses, roster bonuses, and through the spring. So he's kind of been paid already. So it's kind of weird to cut a guy who's shown some things in the NFL and already gotten paid. But there's a lot of guys. Johnny Holton, he showed enough last year. He's a good teams guy, special teams. He had a nice game on Friday. He's still in the mix. Dwayne Harris, same thing. He's had a good camp. He came over from the Giants. He's a good teams guy, can return kicks. Griff Whalen, who we mentioned earlier, has shown well for himself. I don't know how he makes it, but he's had a very nice camp and done everything you can ask of a guy to come in. So then kind of the co-sleeper of camp. We were talking about Chris Warren earlier, but Marcel Aitman's been great. Just a guy who, we were talking about this earlier, when he was drafted, I didn't think he was making this roster. I figured he was a big guy who was probably too slow to make this team, but he makes plays. He makes plays in practice. He makes plays in games. The coaching staff really likes him. I talked to him the other day for a while for a story I'm doing. He's got a little swagger. He's definitely...
and they like that about him.
They like that about him, and so do I. I just think that he came in, and I was like, look, he came in, and the receiver thing's kind of stacked. All these guys here. He said, you know what? I come out in the field, I see all these guys, I'm like, hey, let's compete. Let's do it. I think that's a great attitude to have. So I really I like that young kid. I think he has a chance to actually not only make the team, but have a role in the end zone.
If you look at Griff Whalen, I think we've always kind of thought, okay, Dwayne Harris is the guy that you look at as a return guy. Well, obviously, Griff Whalen got what he had: two kick returns and 4 punt returns in the preseason debut. If he shows that he can be the return guy, and you think he can provide you more as a receiver than Dwayne Harris, I guess he has a chance to kind of squeeze Harris off the roster and take in that role.
Well, if we have Aben making the roster, I don't know what we're doing with Seth, if we're trading him or cutting him, but so it probably comes down to Whalen, Harris, and Holton, maybe for one spot, if that. So, Yeah, there's a lot
And
to
that's
watch.
if you keep 6 receivers.
Yeah, there's a lot to watch, not only Saturday, but going forward in the last 3 games. So definitely be a tight battle to the end.
Yep. All right. We talked about receivers. We're going to continue talking about a receiver with the biggest disappointment.
That's Martavis Bryant. And that sounds harsh, but Gruden mentioned he had a slow start to camp. That wasn't really catching out the offense and didn't really understand all the different roles he had. Like, he wasn't taking advantage of all the versatility they want him to have. And so I think that he was held back at the beginning. And now he's missed 2 days in the last week with migraine headaches. So I just think he hasn't been. They had such high hopes for him. They still probably do. They still think he's a guy, very unique, different guy.
He's the white tiger.
He's the white tiger, as John said. But just hasn't had the camp that you'd want of a guy that you have such high hopes for.
Yeah.
And there's always, and being a 2-strike guy with a drug program, that's always going to be lurking behind him. So you never can be totally confident in if you're the coaching staff or Reggie with his role. I just think that he hadn't helped himself with this camp. He's added more questions to the pile.
Yeah, and I think Gruden is just kind of refuses to count on him and go all in on him and talk him up too much just because, he knows that basically every day Martavis Bryant needs to be working his ass off to not only keep himself on the straightened path and making sure he can be on the football field, but just, he needs to make sure the guy is doing all the work to be a productive player. And the physical talent is there, but he's the white tiger. They don't know when they're going to get to see him. And Gruden was having fun on Wednesday.
He had that one. He had that one queued up. Definitely, he had that one ready. He was waiting for that question, and he's like, Martavis Bryant. Let me tell you a story about Busch Gardens. But,
yeah, that was all queued up. All right, and we're gonna go on to the rookie of the camp, and man, we're gonna go with 3-way tie here.
What a cop out! You can't just pick one guy.
It's pretty weak.
But yeah, it makes sense. The three rookie defensive linemen, P.J. Hall, Maurice Hurst, and Arden Key, have been as good as advertised, if not better. I think they're all going to have big roles in this team. I thought P.J. Hall is probably the slowest starter of the bunch. He didn't have a great
He started on PUP.
He was hurt, like a pectoral strain.
Yeah.
Start camp. But he's come on like gangbusters. He definitely has that low center of gravity and just has that kind of that will and that push where he gets through. You talked to him after the game on Friday.
Yeah. I mean, and he's a guy that, I mean, he was ready for that moment. He told me that one of his coaches he had talked to, he wasn't clear if this was one of his college coaches or one of these guys here, but how he had talked to him about, on my first NFL snap I got a sack. And so he's like, well, I kind of want to do that. And then he did. I mean, that's not easy to do. I mean, but he came in a third down situation and really just overpowered his blocker. I mean, you can't talk about a more impressive way to start your NFL career. I mean, I know it's just a preseason game, but the first snaps of a preseason game for veterans mean nothing, but for a rookie, that's your first time on that stage, on that field. And I mean, he got out there with the ones. I mean, on that first drive, so it's not like he was entering the game in the third quarter against a bunch of backups.
Right.
So that was impressive. And a guy, him and Mo Hurst, their lockers are right next to each other, and I assume that'll probably stay that way. We'll see. The locker room will be a little bit reconfigured after some guys are cut, but right now they're next to each other, and at least in the game day locker room. And those are two guys that I think they enjoy having each other to push, and it's going to be. I think it has the potential to be a really good combo.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we saw from this camp in the game is that they have the makings of a really nice rotation up front. They have a lot of guys, brought a lot of veteran guys in. They drafted these guys. They re-signed Jelly, who is fine. Jelly's not great, but
good run stuffer a little bit.
Good run stuffer, and they have hopes to be better against the pass. Mario Edwards has been motivated this camp, so just whenever Matt gets back, and you got Irvin on the other side, so just the makings of a really good group of guys who can rotate, keep everybody fresh, and get after the other team. So that's definitely one of the biggest things biggest positives we've seen from camp this year.
All right, we're going to stick with the defensive line theme when we mention our defensive player of camp.
Defensive player at camp is Bruce Irvin. Just been very vocal from day one, just always on guys, both good and bad. Yesterday, Arden Key, I was talking to Arden Key, it's like, because Arden Key shadows him wherever he goes. Irvin is pretty much told, look, man, if I go to the bathroom, you're in the next stall with me. Like, wherever I go, you're with me. You're going to follow me.
Battle shits.
Yeah, you're not going to screw up. And Arden definitely has done that. And Bruce works very hard. He's out there every day, I just think that he, like Arden said, he does a great job of he'll tear you down. Like he'll tear you down, just make you, and then he'll build you back up. He's not going to leave you there just to die on the ground. He'll tear you down, talk a lot of crap, tell you what you did wrong in a way that kind of hurts a little bit, stings a little bit. Then he'll build you back up. Like, hey man, you're doing good. You're making progress. And I know Bruce has also been like a key part in the development of Colton Miller. He goes against Colton every day. He's giving Colton like tips and feedback, and he thinks Colton will be good down the road. So just a guy who's been very valuable on the field and off the field, and kind of I think he'll deny this, but I think he has tried to take a step up with Khalil not being here. I think he's trying to be that guy. He says it's not true, but I'm calling Bruce a liar. I think he has tried extra hard to be more vocal this camp and be definitely the leader that this defense needs.
Yeah, especially without Khalil here, and Khalil is not the vocal guy like Bruce is. I mean, he does it in his own certain way, but I mean, I think Khalil isn't going to be talking to Colton Miller a lot. He's not going to be talking in his ear, talking trash to Colton Miller. That's just not his style. He's going to just kind of quietly motivate guys. But Bruce is going to push everybody on this team. If you're anywhere near him, he's going to be pushing you. Like, you've seen the photo? I think we ran it with one of your stories of him and Arden Key. Just like everyone's like, what was going on there? Right. I just like, I don't know. I mean, but it was just this
very intense photo,
like death stare that they were giving each other, and to kind of show. I mean, and that's just who he is, and I mean, I think without Khalil here, he's definitely ratcheted up that a notch, and that's good for the Raiders.
Tom Cable was with him in Seattle. He mentioned how Bruce is a different guy now. He's definitely different energy, different. Just he's trying to help other players get better, and just all about leaving his mark on this team. So it's been very cool to watch.
All right, now it's time for our final award, the MVP.
Another former Seahawk.
This is probably going to be a surprising choice for some people.
Yeah, we talked about Derek Carr. We said, nah.
A little too obvious. You threw out John Gruden.
I threw out John Gruden because everything is about Gruden.
He's the all-star.
Every player you talk to is, Gruden this, Gruden that. And every coach, every reporter comes here, it's all about Gruden. And he's definitely the main presence here. But I like our choice. We picked Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn has come in great shape this year. He definitely looks.
And if you didn't believe us, he
showed
you. On Friday.
We told you that before Friday, and you saw Friday the 60-yard run, which was probably the best run he's had here in a year and a half. And he's probably lost about. No one's giving me a number, but I'm guessing 10 pounds. Mm-hmm. He looks a lot quicker, and he definitely has been focused. He and Gruden have been on the same page. You see him like always talking, and he's always in Chris Warren's ear, and just also with Jalen and DeAndre, he's just trying to help those guys get better. Just kind of taking on I guess silence, right, where a silent leadership role. He's not very outwardly vocal, but he's been great. I just think he's going to have a good year. I don't exactly know what the split will be with him and Doug Martin. They're also kind of putting Doug Martin, kind of stashing him away to the regular season. I think we'll probably see him split carries, but the running game should be good.
Yeah, I think Marshawn's going to emerge as a pretty big 1A. If Martin's, I think Martin will settle into a little bit more of a backup role than. And I think part of this is I know Gruden kind of made the point when he first came here, when it wasn't certain, are you going to bring back Marshawn? What's going to happen with Marshawn? And he basically said, I want the Seattle Marshawn. I don't want last year's Marshawn. And we know Marshawn was pretty good down the stretch last year, but I think that when he says that, he's talking about the commitment level. He wants a guy that's fully committed, and he wants to see a guy that's going to be working hard and wants to be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type running back again. I think so far we're seeing the Seattle Marshawn. I mean, he's older. I don't know if he can maintain it for 16 games, but the way he closed the season strong last year after his suspension shows that he's still got some physicalness left in his body. And so if he can give him 16 games of that, the Raiders could be pretty special on offense.
Yeah, Marshawn said last year he's running for Oakland City, and I think this year could be even better. He could be running better for his city this year.
Definitely. All right, well, let's hit up a few questions here before we check out of the Marriott here in Napa and head home. I say that like we've been staying up here the whole time. I mean, this is like my fourth time driving up here.
This room service bill.
Woo! Sorry, Tim. All right, let's go. State of the Nation mail. As always, you guys can send us questions using the hashtag SOTNmail. Take them on Twitter. We will take them in the comments section of our previous podcast. And, all right. We're going to talk a little Khalil Mack. We got a question from the guy's handle is HKEK Music. Please tell me, will Mack be on the field game 1?
Yes.
Yeah.
Next question.
I mean, the trade stuff. I mean, I know that we know websites have to put out the possible trade scenarios. He's not getting traded. He's not getting traded.
He's not getting traded.
They have team control of him for 3 years.
It makes no sense to trade Khalil Mack.
I mean,
Zero.
Reggie McKenzie, and I know that this is more of a Reggie and John kind of collaboration now, but I mean, Reggie McKenzie has spent the last few years setting up the structure of this, setting up the whole structure of the salary cap to absorb $25 million for Derek Carr. And maybe when he started planning, he didn't know it was going to be quite $25 million. But, the whole plan was they're going to have $20 million or so for Carr and $20 million or so for Khalil Mack. You don't do all that planning, set up all these deals that had money dropping off the table at this point and creating space that, come next year when an extension will take place. You don't set all that up to then go trade Khalil Mack. I mean, I know people want to say that John Gruden is more committed to the offense, and you telling me he doesn't want maybe the best defensive player in the league?
I mean, he said again yesterday that he's their best player. I mean, he knows it, and it's not a surprise. He wants his best player here. I just think, negotiations sometimes don't go well. They take a while. There's dead periods, like there was a dead period for a while here. It's all about guaranteed money. I mean, Khalil Mack wants a certain number, and the Raiders want a different number. And I think people say that Aaron Donald doesn't matter. It matters a little bit. You want to see there's talking now he wants $24 million a year, and I think who knows when he'll sign. But they always have been tied together, and I think they still are. I just think that when you see one of them sign, which probably would be Donald first, it definitely would set some parameters a little better than what they have been so far, because they're both unique guys and they're both in the same situation. So I don't know if they'll get a deal done this year. I don't know if he'll come back and play for his $14 million that he has already. Last year was contract, and he gets a new deal next year, tagged next year. But it makes no sense to trade him. I do think he'll be here. I mean, last year Donald Penn, I keep saying this, held out for 26 days, came back. They then worked on things a little faster pace and got something done, and he got more money. Could be the same way with Khalil. I think he'll come back before the fourth game. I think Donald Penn came back for the third game last year, I believe. So he was 26 days. He's been 21 for Khalil right now. So I'm not. I know people are panicking, freaking out. You turn the TV on. It's oddshark.com as the Packers trading. I mean, again, if you ask somebody a question and you lead off with, "Hey, oddsharks.com," so then right there, that question is ridiculous and shouldn't be. But I'm not going to get on my little soapbox. But they're not trading Khalil Mack. He'll be here. I don't know how happy he'll be when he gets here based on what's going to happen in the next week or two, but he'll be here, he'll play hard, he'll be a dominant guy, and their defense will be that much better.
Well, and the word out of L.A. is that Aaron Donald and the Rams are now in the same zip code, I think is what they're saying. So if they're in the same zip code and they're kind of closing in on something, I mean, I don't think Khalil and the Raiders are quite in the same zip code yet or anywhere close to the same state, but if you figure once the Rams get in that zip code and get that hammered out, I don't think it'll take too much longer for Khalil. I mean, who knows? But we'll see what happens. But he's not gonna sit out games.
Yeah, and it's definitely tricky when you give Derek Carr $125 million, $75 of it guaranteed, and there's a lot of guaranteed money out there. So you can't just keep writing these huge checks without really trying to get the number down to where you're more comfortable with it. So. Again, I don't know if it'll happen this year as far as the deal. I think it still could. People say it's not possible, but I think it definitely could happen before the season starts. And if it doesn't, then maybe next year, but he'll play under his current contract. So I'm not too worried about Khalil Mack not showing up.
All right, next question is from Guillermo. Is Marquel Lee's improvement at middle linebacker a result of offseason work or coaching?
I think coaching. I mean, I think Marquel has always been in good shape. He's kind of been that thumper guy. I don't think his body's changed too much since last year. I think he just I think Paul Guenther's a really good coach. I mean, that's one of my biggest takes from the offseason in camp is, like, you're watching him out there. It's a lot different than watching Jack Del Rio and Ken Norton Jr. And I just think he knows what guys, he kind of plays up guys' strengths. He gets guys to develop, and Marquel Lee definitely is making reads and reactions more than faster and better than he did last year. I think that's all because of the film study and with Guenther kind of in his ear. So I just see, like, Shalik Calhoun's the guy I mentioned earlier. He's definitely better than he was last year. That's not tied to, I mean, I'm sure Shalik's worked hard and in good shape, but to me it's all about coaching. I think that's why if you're Khalil Mack and I assume you watched part of that game, maybe highlights, but you got to be excited about, I mean, the guys around you being able to contribute more than they have in the past.
Yeah, my feeling, I kind of thought this on Gruden, is that for all we want to talk about what Gruden brings in terms of the offense and what the work he's going to do with Carr and all that, I think his ability to hire a staff may be his biggest contribution. Just the fact that John Gruden picks up the phone and says, "Hey, I want you on my staff." You're going to listen. You're going to at least take the interview.
Plus, he told those guys like 2 years ago. These guys who say, "Hey, if I come back, I promise no more Gruden voices." I almost went my bad Gruden voice, but he's told guys like 2 years ago, I may come back at some point. I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure when, but if I do, can I count on you? Are you a guy I should call? And people's like, yeah, keep me on your list. He has this magic list of guys, and Mark Davis gives him the big check, and he's in, and all of a sudden
he gave him a blank check for coaches, too.
Exactly. So, I mean, look at the guys he brought in. Edgar Bennett, former offensive coordinator. Turgovac's been one of the top D-line coaches in the league for years. I mean, we talked about Paul Gunther as well, probably a future head coach. Go down the list. I mean, Bisaccia, he's done a great track record with the Cowboys. So just Ole, my guy, just guru with the young quarterbacks. Just a really good coaching staff, and I think you can see that. You can see the results on the field already.
All right, we got another question here from Jason. Does Daryl Worley have the inside track on being the third corner? If not, who is next in line? And as a follow-up, is Gilchrist going to be back on the field anytime soon? So we'll start with Worley. I mean,
I think so.
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody else. I think.
Question: do you think he gets a couple game suspension?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when, but I think
at some point there'll be like I'd say about a 2-gamer maybe.
Yeah, it was ugly enough, and it was visible enough where he's getting tased. He's in the middle of the street drunk. So I just think the league, that's the kind of stuff they want to make examples of. So he pleaded guilty to it, got some probation, and I just think. I think they'll come down the pike at some point. So I think he's number 3 guy. I'm trying to think who else jumps out so far at camp.
Leon Hall,
Hall. I mean, Dexter McDonald's not making this team. Antonio Hamilton, I don't think so. But he's actually not been bad. But I just think there's after Conley and Melvin, you probably got, you said, Leon Hall, the veteran guy, and Worley. So it's I think it's pretty much set.
And I think if they have a healthy Garyon Conley with Rashawn Melvin and Daryl Worley, pretty good trio.
Worley's not bad. He's pretty good. So and then. Part 2 was Gilchrist. I don't know. I'm trying to think about his ankle, I believe. I think it was an ankle injury. They didn't think it was too serious when it happened, but it's been a week or so now, so maybe we're just playing safe. But I haven't heard any causes for alarm. I mean, he has a big role in this defense. Gunther definitely trusts him a lot, both at safety and in slot. I think a corner at times, so I think you'll see him. In the past, I've said I thought it was a rotation of Carl Joseph, Reggie Nelson, and Gilchrist. I kind of get the sense now that Carl's pretty much set there, so I think Reggie and Gilchrist will be rotating in safety.
Eric Harris, maybe.
Yeah, Eric Harris is also in the mix. So I just think I don't think Gilchrist will be out too much longer, but it's always hard to say.
All right, a couple more questions. Real SQ Burner. And this is a question I got yesterday from somebody else, might have been him too. Can you discuss what the differences are between playing right and left tackle? A lot is being made about the move for Donald Penn. Several elite pass rushers are playing on the left side, so Penn will still be matched up against the best. And the deal is, it's funny because I've said this before. If you're a backup guy, you need to be able to swing back and forth. But these starters, I mean, he's played 11, 12 years, whatever
12.
It's been in this league. Always at left tackle, other than those 24 snaps against. It's funny. Gruden's like, he's played right tackle. He played 24 snaps of one game in which he was miserable. But when every single practice you go out there at left tackle, every single OTA session, every single rep you take is you're opening up. You're opening up that left foot first, and now all of a sudden you're opening up that right foot. It completely alters the footwork, makes it exact opposite of everything you've ever done. So. It's not that big of a deal when you're a guard and because you're all in the interior, but when you move from always playing one tackle and you've never practiced the other side, I'm confident that Donald, with a few weeks of practice, can get it down. It was much more difficult in that New Orleans game, although he played well on the right side. He didn't think he played well, but he did. It's much more difficult in that situation just to because you haven't practiced it. But give him some practice, he'll be fine. But, I mean, it's doing everything completely different. I know his comparison back in New Orleans that time, he writes left-handed. He said it was like trying to write right-handed.
Right. Yeah, it's like you're developing your reflexes. Like, your reflexes you have set already, like the way you react to things is now totally out the window. And for Donald, he mentioned that even the last few weeks at camp and OTAs, he's been studying the offense. He hasn't been on the field. He's been on the field a little bit, but not doing drills. But everything he's done studying-wise has been from the left side, so that's all out the window. So I think he'll be fine. I don't think he has much of a choice. And I think you mentioned the pass rushers who play on the right side as well. I have to believe there'll be more guys going to the left side against Colton Miller now with Donald Penn on the right side. I think Donald Penn said all the right things. I think they did a nice job handling this move. I also still think if there actually was a battle, if they were going to battle for left tackle, I have no question Penn wins that battle. Yeah. But you're trying to develop Colton. I think they felt if they moved him, it might retard his progress. I think he had problems in college switching back and forth.
He told us on the podcast. Yeah.
So I just think at this point, you kind of cross your fingers. I mean, Miller has not been great. He's been fine. He's been up and down. He showed some good things and bad things. But by no means anyone here think that he's a lock to be a steady left tackle this season. Maybe it's definitely, I think people are confident he'll be that guy in the future. They've seen enough from him in terms of his athleticism and his work habits, and he's a very smart kid. Long term, like even Bruce Irvin will say, long term, I think he's going to be really good. The question mark is, can he be good this year?
Yeah.
I think we don't know that yet.
Are you surprised that Donald agreed to move to right?
I was a little bit because I've talked to him about it over the months. But again, I think with him, it's he said, I'm not dumb, I'm not stupid. I'm 35 years old. I think the chance to guarantee money next year. He had no money guaranteed next year, and now he does. And like he said, he's definitely a team player. I think he wants to win. He loves the guys in that front line. I think he just saw the writing on the wall. I mean, he knows how Gruden is, and I just think that why not stay 2 more years, in a way you hadn't planned on, than risk not being part of this at all.
Yeah, because I mean, he's good enough still at left tackle that he could have forced himself to get traded and been able to stay there. But let's say he goes somewhere and plays another year at left tackle, and then they're done with him after this year. And all of a sudden next year he's trying to find somebody who will pay me to play left tackle. If he makes that move to right tackle, I mean, that can conceivably add a couple years onto his career because, there's less pressure a little bit on a right tackle. And I know he said yesterday that he doesn't want to play too long. And so, I mean, I think he's probably thinking about getting through this year, getting through next year. Right. And now that he's got guaranteed money on the books for next year, that increases the chance that, I think if he had played left tackle, it would have been this year, and then the Raiders would have said goodbye to him.
Yeah, I think he had no chance of being on the roster next year.
Yeah, now he gives himself a chance to play 2 more years with the Raiders at right tackle. The last 2 years they have here in Oakland, and we know he's a guy that grew up a Raiders fan down in L.A., but he grew up a Raiders fan. He's wanted to be on this team as with them winning. It killed him that in 2016 that not only was Derek Carr not in that playoff game, he didn't play in that playoff game. He was hurt. That was the first game. We talk about his consecutive game streak that ended last year with the foot injury. Well, he also had the small fracture in his knee in the finale in 2016 that he couldn't play in that postseason game. He's the one guy on this roster that has played for John Gruden. And so I think the chance to play 2 more years here is kind of cool. Gives him that opportunity, and if he embraces the right tackle spot, if Colton Miller becomes a franchise left tackle, and you suddenly just flipped you've got a Pro Bowl at left guard, a Pro Bowler at center, a potential Pro Bowler at right guard. I mean, I know Derek Carr talked about it, how they just don't want to put 4 Raiders offensive linemen in the Pro Bowl.
Right.
A Pro Bowler at right tackle and a first-round pick at left tackle. I mean, you've got the makings of they've been a good line the last few years. This could potentially be their best. Yeah,
the one small wrinkle I'll add to the whole thing is that Brandon Parker's missed the last few weeks with an ankle injury. I just think this kind of obviously you couldn't count on him this year because of the injury, but he's a 3rd-round pick, and now you're talking about a 3rd-round pick not being able to start next year also at right tackle. So I mean, he's not going to be out Donald Penn next year if Donald Penn comes back. I don't think so, but so I just think that that pick was always a little questionable, and now I think it's become a little more questionable. I just think that if you pick a 3rd-round lineman, he's got to start at right tackle, not left tackle, but at right tackle he's got to start. So I just think. They did a really nice job. We mentioned that earlier with the defensive side of the ball. So maybe the offensive side of the ball, the picks weren't great, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you can get 2 years of him as your backup swing, if he can swing for the next 2 years and then be your right tackle, you can kind of salvage that. I mean, if they get impact play out of P.J. Hall, Arden Key, Maurice Hurst, and Colton Miller. If you hit on all 4 of those draft picks, and maybe Nick Nelson is a somewhat productive fourth cornerback, fifth cornerback, or whatever. You can kind of live with whatever you get out of Brandon Parker, but it's
another question.
The
Mark,
second,
is Breno Giacomini. He's a guy who
forget about him.
Well, yeah, he was probably going to be the starter at right tackle. He has a knee injury. He's been out the last few weeks, but now. Is he done, or do you have to keep him around just in case Colton Miller has trouble? You have to move down back to the left side, because if you do that, you can't plug Parker in, I don't think, at this point. So yeah. I don't know if you're going to have to keep Breno also just as an insurance clause, because I'm not sure where Sharp is. I know Gruden keeps trying to – they try to talk him up, but when they do that, though, it's funny. Like Gruden, I keep raising the bar for Sharp, and he can't quite get there, but I keep raising the bar.
He went into the Gruden voice again.
I did it again. I'm sorry. I apologize. But so, yeah, I think that we mentioned receiver and how it's a big mess in terms of the roster and the last few spots. I think O-line is also a huge question mark because it's hard to figure out Denver Kirkland, where does he fit in? It's kind of hard to figure out what these roles are going to be now that Penn's at right tackle.
All right, we're going to go two more questions here. This one's from London Raider. Are there any concerns over Maurice Hurst against the run? Yes, he has great quickness in the rush, but got destroyed on running plays last week. And does Hall look like a much more rounded player? Now, I know there was a one play where Hurst got destroyed, but I think there was at least another play where he was able to I don't know if he got the tackle for loss or the tackle line of scrimmage, but he was able to burst his way in there and help impact a play. I mean, he's a guy that I think that's going to happen every once in a while. He's a rookie. It's going to happen.
And that's why you got Jelly. That's Jelly's job. I think that's going to be his role. I mean, every rookie's going to have growing pains, things are not great at yet. That's definitely more Hurst's Achilles heel, I'll say at this point. But, again, if you have a rotation and trying to pick your spots, I think he's a very strong kid, very smart. He should be able to adjust to that. But in the meantime, we mentioned Ellis, we mentioned Mario Edwards. I don't know what Trayvon Hester makes his team, but there's other guys you can plug in rotation that can help fill that gap against the run.
Final question here from Jesus Shuttleworth. How many wins do you think it'll take for this season to be considered a success?
I think the bar is pretty low. I just think he's got a 10-year contract. So, I know he said he wants to win now, but I wrote about it earlier how, there's so much roster turnover this year, probably more next year. So I think if they can win 8 games or 9, I think that's a successful season. I don't think that the playoffs are a mandatory thing you have to reach this year. I do think the division's wide open, so that gives them some hope. But I think just building on things, getting the young guys to develop and having all these young guys we've mentioned so far, so to me, 9 wins will be a successful season.
Yeah, I think 8 wins is kind of. I think. You bring in John Gruden, you do this big move. I think you need to at least be a 500 team. Yeah. So, I think if they had a losing season, if they go 6-10 again, then that's a disappointment. Even 7-9. So I think 8-8 is kind of the bar you want to hit. And so anything above that, like you said, 9 wins, 10 wins, if they get into the playoffs, certainly, then you consider it a success. But it's not a mandatory thing. But you just want to see that they're kind of back in the right direction. You want to see competence on offense, competence on defense. They were a team that 2 years ago was an elite offense and were incompetent last year for a lot of the season. And defensively, they've obviously been very far underperforming for too long. So competence on defense, they can just even crack the top 20 in defense. I think I looked it up. I think 2010 was the last time they even had a top 20 defense. And getting into the 19-20 range, that's not great, but get it in the top 20 on defense, have a top 12 offense, and just show that you've got some competence going there, and you can kind of keep building this thing up, and we'll see what they can do over the next few years.
Yeah, you look at last year's record. They had 6 wins, but really only counting 4 because 2 of them came against Paxton Lynch and Geno Smith. So the bar is lower than people think it is. They weren't really a 6-win team. They got lucky there twice. And so I think if you can build off that 4-win season and get 8 or 9, that's a big jump.
It's weird how the NFL is so weird to me. That 12-win season, they weren't a 12-win team.
No.
They won 12 games.
Right.
But they weren't a 12-win team, but they
everything broke
right. Yeah. And so I think the difference between that 12-win to 6-win season, I think probably both years they were about like an 8 or 9-win team, and one year everything went right, one year everything went wrong, and that's how the NFL works.
Yeah, so much of it is based on confidence. Like last year, they got hit in the mouth with the Redskins, and it kind of went downhill from there. So I just think that if you kind of build the sense that things are going the right direction, guys can kind of stack good performances off good performances, kind of build something up, and that's how you can improve. So I just think they have the confidence right now with Gruden. Everyone thinks things are on the right path. So we'll see how it goes once the season starts.
All right, well, that'll wrap up this episode of the State of the Nation podcast. You guys can always check us out on Apple, iTunes, or on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio now, YouTube. Our post-game show went wild on YouTube. We were getting all sorts of views on YouTube for our post-game show. SoundCloud, we're everywhere. Hook us up with a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts, and we will come to you again on Saturday after the Raiders take on the LA Rams in the second preseason game. Vic will be down there. He'll give me a call post-game, and we'll report up a show for you guys.
Talking about Seth Roberts' huge game.
And then you're getting traded. All right, talk to you later, guys.